Views and opinions expressed by the guests of Sasquatch Experience do not necessarily reflect the opinion of the hosts, sponsors, or affiliates of the Sasquatch Experience. As always, listener discretion is advised.
And good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Sasquatch Experience. Hopefully you didn't have as many technical difficulties as we did when we started here, because, ladies and gentlemen, I am in fact an idiot and have not figured out how to click the right link. Or
CNN technical advisor and engineer.
Yeah, I'm going to fire myself. As you can see tonight, episode 34, the season 3 finale. Can you guys believe we made it through the whole summer of Sasquatch?
Yeah, that was quick.
As you can see, the show tonight, I said, hey, guys, did you really want to, what do you want to do in this last show? And Baker goes, I want to interrogate Henry. So tonight's show has become Harassing Henry May. And actually, we've gotten some positive comments. I don't know why I said actually. That's kind of rude to Henry. I'm sorry, Henry. Not that people don't find you interesting or fascinating, but what I find the commentary that we've gotten from people, they're very excited to hear how this show's going to go. So I'm going to stop talking for a minute. And Vance, I'm going to throw it to you. You did have a little housekeeping you wanted to do there, my friend.
Well, I do have housekeeping to do, and if anybody would like to come over and clean my house, I would greatly appreciate it, because I got a lot of cat hair. Well, perfect. No, I wanted to kick off the show by giving a big shout out to our friend down under, Bear O'Brien, who sent feedback to the Sasquatch Experience. The fact that he's in Aussie and he is in complete lockdown, can't even leave his house because it's a prison state, and I strongly protest that because they had 3 people pass away or actually caught the COVID, so they shut everything down in Australia. And then, it got me to thinking. I contacted him back, appreciated the fact that he's listening to the Sasquatch Experience as a form of entertainment because of the lack of anything else he's able to do. So thanks to Bear O'Brien. I greatly appreciate the fact that we're being listened to in the great land down under. But then also, with all these lockdowns going on, I wonder if there's any Yowie activity sticking its head out of the woods going, where the hell is everybody?
Well, I guess that's where we'd want to start there with our good friend Bear O'Brien, and we are very thankful and grateful for the feedback. We're very grateful and thankful for all of your feedback, so keep it coming, folks. And listen, we understand from time to time we have technical difficulties. We get it. Bite me. Okay, we do our best. But what I would prefer is that you judge the show based on its content, and I understand that hearing it may be part of getting to that content.
Right.
But unless you have, or unless you're deaf and need this show in closed captioning, you should be able to at least hear something. And if you're deaf, I'm sorry. But if you're not, like the show, there's other ways of listening. You can watch the video, heaven forbid. But just stop with the stupid remarks on iTunes. God, I hate it. I love I've never seen a group of stupid people in my life more than commentators and commenters on iTunes. I know, I understand that, but it's like it's trickling into my personal life now by these idiots that leave iTunes reviews. Like, listen, I'm looking at you in the camera. Be present about the review, okay? It's not hard. You either like it or you don't.
Right.
If you don't like it, okay, we'll work on it. But shut the hell up. Why don't you try doing something positive with your life, you freaking trolls? Or better yet, put on a podcast yourself. You try it. You know, it's only a free show that costs me $1,400 a year to make, but I'm sorry that my ads are inconvenient for you. Okay, please, I'm better now. Sorry.
Please judge the show on the content of its character and not our skin color.
Yeah, you honky.
Wow.
I'm just saying. I'm not bringing anything into this. I'm just pissed that people can't say something nice. Listen, we get all these reviews, and then we're like a 4.5, 4.6. And listen, there's other garbage shows out there that are at like 4.6. And we're at a 4.1, okay? Because people work on the audio. I spend hundreds of dollars on the audio. If it's not good, get new freaking ears.
Yeah, okay. and let alone the fact that we're all over the country.
Yeah, how about that?
Piecing that together, huh? I'd like to see your little podcast, you know, from all over the country be put together with perfect audio.
Yeah, how about it? Give us a break. You know, we work really hard to bring you a free podcast. Unless, of course, you are a Patreon subscriber, which you can do for as little as $2 a month. And we have some great Patreons that like our content each and every week, and we keep getting more of them. So obviously we can't be that bad. So I really feel like some people should just, we love you too, Jamie. Some people should just get bent and get a real hobby and leave us alone. You know, a free podcast that costs $1,400 a year to produce, you know, and we don't get paid, you know, spend an awful lot of money on it. Just be thankful it's coming at all. And a rant.
Some of us prostitute for it, but, you know. Without mentioning
hold on. Now point, Vance.
Just be happy it's coming at all right?
Yeah, just be happy it's coming at all. Anyhow, we love all you guys. In all seriousness, rate us however you feel. But if we don't start getting some, you know, happy people, I may have to readjust our audience a little bit.
Ooh, slap them a little. I see what you're doing.
So become a Patreon, support us. And just for a couple more housekeeping notes before I turn it over to my good friend James Baker, who's going to interrogate Henry May tonight. You know, we do have Dr. Squatch. Go to our website, sasquatchexperience.com, and click on Dr. Squatch banner to support the show. And just a free plug for the night, the beer that I'm drinking, if anybody's curious, Lancaster Brewing Company Fresh Roasted Peanut Butter English Style Smooth Ale, smooth, rich, and so nutty. And it is a great beer, good with the peanut butter and jelly, Thai food. You can't go wrong.
Wow.
Baker is not having a good time with his beer tonight, but he wouldn't know a good beer if it, if he tried it
on his lap.
Yeah. So other than that, I guess we'll get this show kicked off and started. Henry, my friend, I've known you for almost 2 decades, and we have been kind of like the Bert and Ernie of Bigfoot for the longest time. done some sort of collaboration on and off over the last 2 decades, but folks are really into Henry May, and they want to know what makes you tick. They want to know how you became the walking Squatchopedia, and we want to give them a little bit of that tonight. So, Henry, in a brief nutshell, what the hell are you doing here? Why Bigfoot?
Henry, take my seat, will you?
And what happens for what's kept you in this longer than 20 years?
Henry!
Well, my interest goes back to 1976. My dad got me into this, actually. Got me interested not just in Sasquatch, but in all kinds of different mysteries. You know, I grew up with the old In Search Of series, Leonard Nimoy.
Good show.
Yeah. And also seeing the documentaries on TV, such as The Mysterious Monsters, which is the one that really got me started. So I've had a lifelong interest in this since I was 5 years old, almost 6.
Henry, the Mysterious Monsters is one maybe a lot of today's researchers may not know about.
That's true. It features Peter Graves is the host of it, and he examined mainly Bigfoot, but there was little side trips into the Loch Ness Monster and the Yeti. But it was mainly focused on Bigfoot, the entire movie. But they called it, in some circles, it's called Bigfoot the Mysterious Monster.
Interesting.
Yeah, I have seen some of those episodes, as a matter of fact. And actually, Peter Graves was pretty much, I don't know, he was a good host. I'll put it to you that way. You know, at least these executive producers, kind of put cool people in those narrative positions like Leonard Nimoy and Robert Stack. And he was another one, you know. So Peter Graves was right up there also. Just a perfect entity for that type of show.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Robert Stack, you mentioned, obviously, Unsolved Mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
He definitely lent an air of credibility and also an air of, well, mystery to it.
Right. With a trench coat. Can't do it without that trench coat, man.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, he's a hero to us all.
That's how you wind up on the list.
That's how you wind up. There it goes. Go ahead, Bake.
We know Bake has one, so yeah.
Let's get this harassment of Henry going.
So, Henry, you said you've been doing this since 1976.
Mm-hmm.
What's the first book you read, and what did you think about it? And did it motivate you to do something, or did it motivate you to stop reading?
I think the first book I really remember reading and really enjoying was Marion T. Places on the Track of Bigfoot, which you could find that in just about any library. You can find that in your school library, your regular library.
So it's not written by Mark Twain?
No.
What's it about, Henry?
Well, it mainly went over the events from 1958, and also the PG film, Patterson Gimlin film, and the Ape Canyon incident. And basically, Marion T. Place wrote it for the younger set.
Yeah. I have a copy of that somewhere, Henry, in this house. It's an old copy, too. It's one of those old library hardcover type deals, you know, the kind like they would make specifically for libraries. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty neat. And, you know, I'm glad you brought that book up because that, again, you know, as we often talk about commonalities, was one of the books that, you know, aside from Sasquatch the Apes Among Us, which was the first book I was exposed to, Marion T. Place, when we got to the library and started researching, like you said, that's one of the books that was just about available in every library.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So, if you read it today, would you feel the same way about it? It's geared toward children, or younger.
Well, I guess it would be more. My thinking on it might be a bit colored by the advancing years, but it's a good primer for young people. It really is.
Henry, I guess we'll go down deeper on this with you quick. So like that was written, you know, well before today. So, you know, much closer to the time where perhaps more evidence could have been gathered from some of these areas. Do you think there was an opportunity missed because they were a lot closer to the source time than we are now, where maybe more evidence could have been gathered or more witnesses could have been talked to that potentially were alive then that we'll never have access to again now?
You know, that's a good question, Sean, and I really don't know how to answer that honestly. I think they did as good of a job as they could do with the book at the time. Mm-hmm. I think that Marion T. Place she wrote about Renee DeHenden and John Green. And these are figures that I think every Bigfooter should be looking up to. Because people like John Green, Renee DeHenden, and Grover Krantz, and Peter Byrne, the four horsemen, of Sasquatchery.
Mm-hmm.
Henry, I just read a post not too long ago where someone was, upset that, those four people are held in such high esteem in the field, and maybe unrightfully so, but they were pioneers in this field. And nobody was doing this work. And we say that, but history, the thing about history is that it's often able to be quickly rewritten now. And some of it's really hard to fact check, where you have people saying, I was a student of so-and-so, and I've been around for 45 years, yet somehow Henry May hasn't heard about you in 45 years. So, I don't say that because you're in front of me. I literally say that if Henry May hasn't heard about you, that means somewhere in the literature, you didn't exist, or you just weren't there. Right. So,
right.
How do you explain that now, Henry? Are there some sour grapes? Are there some people that really do go back and color themselves in to a time and place they really had no significance to? And how would we validate that?
It's a good question. And I often wonder, if there's an element of individuals trying to piggyback off people like John Green and Renee DeHenden. Although I think people like Daniel Perez is definitely a contemporary of Renee DeHenden, John Green. He was a young man when he started out as well.
Yeah, and I don't dispel that. I'm just saying, Henry, without, throwing names out there, there are just people that, made claims to be in this field a long time, yet there's nothing
Jevnine.
Okay, well, I wasn't going to call anyone out. I don't know Will.
Right. I did.
Then to be very clear, not that I'm backpedaling or anything, and not that I'm not supporting you, Vance. I just don't know about him. I don't
right.
I don't want to throw shade at somebody. I'm just saying, there are people, and not just him, but Henry, this book you were talking about last week, that if you may just be the single reason why somebody wants to go out and reprint it now, the Tracking Bigfoot. What was the gentleman's name? Charles.
My Travels with Bigfoot, Charles Edson.
Yeah, Charles Edson, right? That's a name I've never heard before until you mentioned it to me. And that's why, Henry, to me, you're really important to kind of the ongoing history of this, because in your own way, you keep it going. And maybe not through your individual work in the field or whatnot, but your ability to take the information and put it out there and make sure that these people are being recognized and I don't want to say paid tribute to, but, recognized and put out there, it's really important, Henry. And I'm glad that we have you here to, for that outlet to happen.
Yeah. And Jenny asked an interesting question. Have I thought of writing a book on Sasquatch? Yeah. And maybe one of these days when things settle down, maybe I'll write one. I don't know.
Are you saying when things settle down, or you settle down, my friend? He's single, ladies.
Yes.
He's single.
This is Harassing Henry, so.
I told you. It wasn't going to be easy.
We're working on getting you a fifth.
No, and, Henry, you have earned the nickname, the Walking Squatchopedia. You've assimilated and probably own a lot of books on the subject. You've read, I think, just about everything there is. Sometimes you put a hard review. Sometimes I think you're a little easy on people and give a nice review because you're a nice guy, but that's just you as a person. How do you stay up with all of it? How the hell do you disseminate, take in all that information and consume it and remember everything?
I guess because it's a subject that's deeply interesting to me, and it's something that, I got a lot of free time on my hands, so I can do a lot of reading. I can stay up till, midnight reading and things like that.
Well, we're grateful you put it to use.
I guess I'm able to retain things more than perhaps somebody else might be able to.
Me, right here. I can't retain crap except water, as you can tell. But you do a wonderful job, and we would be lesser without you, Henry. Your ability to kind of, bring that information to us at just a moment's notice is just remarkable. And I know the listeners love it, and we appreciate it.
And after all, Henry, for whatever magical reason, look, he's got Bob Gumlin looking over his shoulder. So, the guy's got it going on.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bake.
And Henry, I want to tell you, I wanted to do this episode because I think people need to realize that, when they have questions about Bigfoot, you are the person. Or they have questions about certain cryptids, you are the person. And I'll be honest with you, is like the events that I've gone to that you're involved, you are one of the people that like everybody seems to know. It's like, oh, it's Henry. It's kind of like Norm, and like when you don't try to push an agenda. You try to see what the facts on things are, and then you give your opinion, but you're not like so abusive with it that if you feel somebody's wrong in that opinion, you try to see their side and you try to look to see what you can do. So, I want to say that, we're doing this more out of love than to make, fun or anything. So I hope you do it that way.
No, that's fine. I feel honored that you picked, me to be the interview subject.
Henry, I picked you 15 years ago as my co-host to go down this journey.
Henry,
and I think people, might have forgot all the battles you and I fought together along the way. We fought Cal Korff on the X Zone radio show. We fought Tom Biscardi. We fought Dallas Gilbert and Wayne Burton, and which that was kind of a handicap match for obvious reasons. But we fought the good fights for a long time, and I wouldn't have been able to be as vociferous and confident in my ability to tackle these people if it wasn't for the countless hours of prep you and I spent together. And you are always quick to correct me when I get a fact wrong, which I absolutely love because I like facts to be facts, not my interpretation of them. But, we go back, Henry, 2005, 2006. What do you think was the most tumultuous battle we fought in the early days of Sasquatch Experience that if we had to go back and
the Georgia hoax. Yeah. Later, 2 nights later, you come on. It's like it's in you said, well, it's all a hoax, and because of the work of Steve Coles, Steve really looked into it.
Yeah, and actually, that put a big strain on Steve and I's relationship because everything we tried to do was misconstrued. From the fact that at one point, Henry, you, Eric Altman, and myself were all labeled co-conspirators in the hoax. I provided phone records to Paul Vella to prove and vindicate that you and I were telling the truth. It was a wicked time. That these people, and to some people it's silly, it was a Bigfoot in a freezer, but guys, you have to understand, back in 2007, 2008, like it was still a different kind of world than what it is today. And Henry and I had the information, we sat on it as long as we could, and then we broke it, and it was a lot of work.
I think that was probably the same period of time that social media just cracked open, correct? You know,
probably
Facebook had just become a new thing, and I kind of took it as, well, maybe we're just jumping on this platform for popularity purposes, but yeah, that kind of dates how little bit we had then as to what we have now. That's all my point was.
No, I remember that because at the time it was very like we were getting up to date moments, we were getting information, and we had people right and left just going, well, you guys just can't believe, and da da da. And then we got, the worst part is like we talk about all the time about how we want people to discover, be in the field, things like this, like Henry's saying, read books, do a variety of things. They were on national news, like everywhere, and everybody's like talking Bigfoot and talking this and talking that. Same with when they got the footage from some of the game cam footage. It actually made the local news. And the worst part is like we're sitting here like this just sets us back 10 years.
It does.
You know?
In fact, it was. Go ahead, Bake.
Because it's very hard. You know, it's kind of like we always talk about, you know, be a good researcher and credibility. Once you've crossed that bridge of crazy or lying, it's very hard to pull back and go, yeah, that was a time that we were kind of, you know, didn't get what we were doing, and we had some people screwing us over. That it's very hard to pull that back and to get people to believe again, or at least to try to look.
And I think you framed that up really nice when you said it was, you know, the real first time in modern times it was getting mainstream news. And I remember talking to Henry night after night, like, wow, Henry, this thing's really blowing up. And at some point it's either going to be a hoax or it's going to be the real deal. And then I remember getting the news that it was a hoax. And then the question to Henry and I was, Henry, you probably remember this conversation. Well, how long do we sit on this? And we were asked not to go public. And we did go public on it prematurely because I think for Henry and I, you know, maybe hindsight being a little different now, might have done it a little differently. It wasn't that we were trying to break the news first. We were just trying to break the news and get people to understand, like, you know, not every one of us, and Henry, this is something you've been serious about a long time, is crazy. You know, some of us take this real seriously, right?
Exactly.
And so Henry and I got history.
Yeah. And the information was there. It's like, what do you, I guess Sean and I were kind of debating, well, what do we do with it? Do we disseminate it and put it out there, or do we wait? What do we do with it?
We took a lot of counsel on it too. Talked to a few different people, and you know, at the end of the day, all the information came back the same. You know, get it out there. If it's out there, get it out there. And we did, and we had some people pissed off at us, but that was Henry and I riding, you know, right in the front. Then the time on the X Zone radio show, Henry, you remember all that going up against Cal Korff and the Patterson Gimlin film, and
oh yeah.
You've been a pretty staunch supporter of the PG film over the years.
Yes, I have, and I mean it's because I believe Bob Gimlin.
You've personally met Bob multiple occasions.
I mean, I have.
You have a reference to, you know, actually sitting down with the man and looking him in the face and saying, you know, asking the question of, you know, hey, da-da-da, and you know, your impressions have always been the man was telling what happened, not a story.
Exactly.
How was that meeting one of the you know, I don't want to, you know, one of the first
historical figure.
Yeah, historical figure. We'll go with that.
Oh, it was tremendous. It really was. It was just a watermark, a watershed moment for me.
Henry, you've met a bunch of them. Go ahead, James.
Was that Ohio when you met him the first time?
It was at the first Yakima Bigfoot Roundup in 2009.
He went to Washington for that, big. Washington State.
Because the first time I met him was in Ohio. Really nice guy. Like there was not any pretense about him or anything. He's like, I'm just here to tell you what happened, and I'm kind of glad to just be invited to the show.
Mm-hmm.
Humble, very humble individual.
But Bob Gimlin's not the only horseman that, or one of the legendary figures that Henry's met. He's met John Green, which is something I'm very envious about. I never got to meet John Green in person, but Henry, you did. What was that like? Because I know as somebody that appreciates the literature and the information, that had to be pretty remarkable.
Well, I mean, that was like meeting. It was the equivalent of meeting your favorite baseball player or something.
Right. A hero.
Yeah, a hero. Exactly.
Cryptid hero. Yeah. Very cool.
Well, speaking of cryptid heroes, we got to take a break for a snack, for a bathroom break. It's that time already, Henry. We've already made it halfway through the program of your interrogation, and we're going to pick it up a little bit when we get back. Folks, we'll be right back. Sasquatch Experience, Sean Forker, Vance Nesbitt, James Baker, and Henry May. We'll be back right after this. Take it away, Vance.
Sasquatch Experience, Stranger Than Fiction, News and Stories is brought to you by our patrons. Just visit patreon.com/Sasquatch Experience. For as little as $2 a month, you can become part of the experience. And Dr. Squatch, soap and shampoos. Just click on the banner for some amazing savings. That's Dr. Squatch, soaps and shampoos. 100% money back guarantee, 100% handcrafted. Page 1, and probably only one. On September 10th, the recipients of the 2021 IG Nobel Prizes awarded by Science Magazine Annuals of Improbable Research were announced Thursday at the 31st Annual IG Nobel Prize ceremony. The Biology Prize went to Swedish researcher Susanna Schultz, who analyzed the variations in cat vocalizations while communicating with humans. The Ecology Prize, that was awarded to a team of Spanish and Iranian researchers who used genetic analysis to compare the different species of bacteria found on discarded chewing gum recovered from paved surfaces in various countries. Intriguing, I know, but wait, there's more. The Chemistry Prize went to a team of researchers from Germany, Britain, New Zealand, Greece, Cyprus, and Austria, who used chemical analysis to test whether bodily odors created by a movie theater audience could be used to track incidents of violence, sexuality, drug use, and profanity in films. These people got prizes, folks. The Economics Prize, well, that was presented to Pavlov Balatovsky, who led a study that suggests the obesity of a country's politician can be used to indicate the level of corruption in that country. I don't know about country, but I can certainly speak for the Illinois governor, who's 900 pounds and is constantly telling us how to be healthy. Oh, you'll all like this one. The Medicine Prize was awarded to OK Kem Boulet, Der Oldekun, Barkut Lippert, and Ralph Holenberger for their study demonstrating that sexual orgasms are as effective as a decongestant medicine and improving nasal breathing. I know, I see Sean over there going, honey, I'm a little stuffed up, right? How about the Physics Prize? That went to a team of researchers who conducted experiments to learn why pedestrians do not constantly collide with other pedestrians. But while that was happening, the Kinetics Prize went to a different team of researchers who looked into why pedestrians do sometimes collide with other pedestrians. Honestly, I'm starting to break a sweat now. This is insanity. Moving on to the Entomology Prize. That was awarded to John Mullernan Jr., Roger Grothaus, Charles Hammond, and Jay Landon, the authors of a research study, A New Method of Cockroach Control in Submarines. You know, I can only imagine this report probably just says, well, I don't know, use a shoe. I mean, seriously. They won prizes. Okay, so now we have one more prize to give away in the category of transportation. And that prize was given to a team from Namibia, South Africa, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, Brazil, Britain, and of course the U.S. had to get in on this one. Researchers who conducted experiments to determine whether it is safer to airlift a rhinoceros with the animal upside down. And they actually lifted a rhinoceros by its feet upside down. You know, I have certainly picked the entirely wrong line of work to get into in order to win a prize, because I don't think this is going to happen in the Sasquatch world. Thanks for listening to this ridiculous edition of the Sasquatch Experience, Stranger Than Fiction news and stories. And let's get back to the harassment of Henry.
Yeah. You seem to have lost bake.
Yeah, well, I kind of figured. Well, he heard about the, sexual orgasm can be used as a decongestant, so he's probably clearing up the sinuses.
Is the audio still going, or is it done?
No,
is it
we hear you.
Blow a drill?
Hey, listen, is the news still playing, or is it over?
It's over.
The news is over.
Okay, well, listen, then people are listening to us, and I lost my audio for the bloody thing. So where the hell is this? Let's get rid of this.
We need a CNN technical engineer.
We need something. We need this to go away. There we are.
Hey,
Can you guys hear us? Are we back?
Yes, we're back. We're good.
Yeah.
We all need a blue chew.
Listen, there are all kinds of technical difficulties that happened. I apologize, and let's get this pony show back on the road. Big, take it away.
So, Henry, as far as documentaries go, since you're such a expert and you absorb so much, what's your favorite documentary and why?
Oh, well, I have to go back to The Mysterious Monsters. I think it's really well done. Although I really also enjoyed, what was it? Monsters, Mysteries, or Myths, which was hosted by Rod Serling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another great voice in that whole genre. Imagine, if you will.
Imagine. Yeah, my favorite one, Twilight Zones, were the ones that were absolutely realistically could have happened, and actually the biggest monster was people. Okay.
The philosophical moments, is that what we're going for, James?
The one
like Godzilla?
No, what was the one called where they the lights went out in the street, so they all turned on each other, and the aliens used it as a test to see what we do to each other if they just got rid of the power?
That was the Twilight Zone episode where they in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just watched that one not too long ago. It was a great episode, but it, still has very little to do with Henry May. So let's get back to Henry.
Harassing Henry. This is what we need to be doing. Go ahead, Bake.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So what So, as a researcher, I'm assessing that you do a lot more books than you do field, or do you do a lot of field?
I don't do a lot of field research. I do a lot of book research.
Oh, look at Kitty.
So, what would you think that your best tool would be if you did do field research?
Ooh, That's a tough question.
We don't ask the easy ones.
A flashlight, infrared, video camera, 8mm camera,
Your
a
cat.
knife, a gun. What would
cute
you
cat.
use?
It was Henry May in the kitchen with the pipe.
No, not that kind of pipe. Sorry.
Henry, I have a question for you.
Yes.
In the last 10 to 15 years, what's been the most important piece of evidence that's been brought forth, in your opinion?
In the last 10 to 15 years, well, it involves technology that they're just starting to use, and that's eDNA, environmental DNA. That they may be getting, but it still comes back unknown.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem.
I think that's going to be the problem too, until there's something to pair it to, right? Or, eventually one could say you could build up enough evidence and collection of this where at some point the unknown becomes something that is just, I don't know, known, right? Like through enough of this evidence collecting and similarity, it has to be something. It can't be just an aberration. It has to be something tangible at that point, right?
Exactly.
But Henry, with the eDNA, can't they use that for narrowing? Like one narrowing down it, like he said, has to be, but also narrowing down the general location where it could have been.
Yeah, they can use it for that purpose, of course. Yes. Well, thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that.
Henry is a good travel compadre. I've ferried him to the airport many times, and I usually need more shocks for the amount of stuff he purchases
Wow, that
at auctions.
All right, Squatchopedia. I've got a question. I've got a question, Squatchopedia. The dermal ridges, the famous dermal ridges that were found in the cast that went to Dr. Meldrum, what year was that? Do you remember? Because I find that pretty compelling evidence too.
Well, here's the thing. It depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about the Onion Mountain cast, that had what appeared to be dermal ridges on it. And then there was a cast from Paul Freeman. That was 1967.
Right.
And there was a cast from 1984 by Paul Freeman, which showed the same kind of ridge flow pattern, according to Jimmy Chilcutt. Jimmy Chilcutt looked at both casts, both examples of casts, and realized that there was dermal ridges in both of them.
I don't know. Personally, I just think that's probably number one with me anyway, as far as at least some physical evidence is when you see the dermal ridges, it just explains a lot to me that this is definitely not a hoax.
Henry, is Jimmy Chilcutt still around? Is he still looking at casts at all, or is he retired?
He's retired from the Conroe, Texas Police Department. I don't know if he's retired from looking at Sasquatch footprints.
That's a good question. Anybody knows out there, let us know. Henry needs that information. Got to keep it fresh, right, Henry?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Mm-hmm.
Henry, what's the first sighting you can ever think of that you knew of or reported? And give us some information on it.
The first sighting that I ever read about was the Ape Canyon sighting, where the miners 1924 saw these creatures, and then they shot at them, but somehow they missed them. So
yeah, Ape Canyon was a pretty interesting account. Like you said, Henry, they shot at these things. Now they did say they shot one and it fell into the canyon.
That was Fred Beck.
Fred Beck, yeah. And I think it was recently that the foundation of the cabin was found, right?
Yes, by Mark Marcel.
And you have a copy of that book, I imagine.
Yes, the little booklet he made about mountain devils.
And what's your thoughts on Mark's work? Do you think he's spot on with that? Do you think there's some room for more information, or do you think he was pretty detailed as he could get with what was available?
I think he was as detailed as he could get, because they found like old nails and old spoons and things like that. They found old nails of the cabin.
Yeah, and part of the foundation, right? Or was it just some timber? I don't remember. I don't have a copy of the booklet.
They found some pieces.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Some wooden pieces of the cabin.
So looking back on this, Henry, you go back to that time. You know, you and me, Sean and Henry. You still think Ape Canyon was a legit encounter?
I'm inclined to think so.
Yeah. Because, there are people that don't believe the Albert Ostman account now. From all that time ago.
That was the same year.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Guys, I got to let my cat out. Hang on.
That's not a euphemism that he has to let his cat out for a second.
Yeah. Okay, the Albert Ostman thing. Fine, we'll just carry that until he gets back. Yeah, I'm assuming he's going to take a negative connotation to Albert Ostman and that entire story. What's your take?
Mine, I don't know. It's a story I grew up on. It was always really interesting. There are some things there that were always fascinating. He was taken in his sleeping bag, carried for miles.
Right.
Taken to this cave type setting and kind of, boarded with this family of Sasquatch till he fed him snuff, made him sick, and got the hell out of Dodge.
Right. So what's your take, Henry? Yay or nay?
The Albert Ostman story?
Yes.
I wouldn't believe it if it happened today.
Okay.
Because there's too much information. There's too much information now about Sasquatch behavior.
Yeah.
I tend to believe it because he waited 33 years to tell the story.
And I think that's interesting, Henry. And you brought a point that we've made on the show here, back and forth over a while, is that it's so easy now to hoax a legitimate sighting. Because of the information that's out there, right? But then you go and gather that this information's come from, the 1920s, even before the 1920s. Like, yeah, the story, Albert Ostman's story, is incredible. I'm not going to say that at all. Right. Are there some holes in it? Yeah, John Kirk's done a really good job at talking about, some of the fallacies in the story. And in fact, I'd love to get John on here and talk about it because it's a fascinating concept. But, again, information available then to what's available now, it's a lot different a lot different of a time and a lot different of a scenario. So I'm kind of with Henry on that.
Mhm.
I'd like it to be real, right? It's a hell of a story.
Yeah.
It's one of the ones we grew up on, but
Right.
just because I want it to be doesn't mean it is.
But just to back up to that time period, he was prospecting, which tells you right then and there that there wasn't much for settlement at that time. So you're an encroachment in what's possibly a creature that lives out there, may have a new curiosity other than the curiosity you would have today, because now these areas are developed and human species are a little bit more visible and maybe have a different understanding from their perspective. But back then, yeah, as a prospector, you're out in the woods, you're solo, maybe something like that could be happening, and I have to agree with, Kevin's point of view that he posted here, that there are inconsistencies, but the overall story, it's still extremely compelling to me, and it's one of my favorites. I want it to be real, like you said.
You made a good point there. You talk about, not a lot of encroachment at that time, but I'd have to believe that there was Sasquatch interaction with people probably a lot more commonly than we think occurred around that time, because believe it or not, they're prospecting, that was a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great way to make a quick buck. I wouldn't say a quick buck, a great way to make a good buck.
Mm-hmm.
Very dangerous, right? And it probably took some rugged men to do that. One of the ways to keep people away from your honey holes of sort was to make up wild tales and stories to keep people away.
Right.
And
but he was a young buck at the time when it happened, though.
Yeah. Well, you always start off as a young buck somewhere, but you'll learn behavior, right? Behavior's learned.
Right.
If you listen to the old timers telling ghost stories and all this stuff to keep people away, what's one of the first things you're probably going to do? Well, hell, I'll make up my own story of myself to keep people away from my prospecting mind.
No,
right?
I wouldn't blame you.
In my heart of hearts, I would like it to be real because it's a story I grew up on, a lot of nostalgia, a lot of great feeling from it. But, there's a lot of inconsistencies. And to Henry's point, like if it was today, hell no, it probably wouldn't be believable. But, a different time. Back to you, Henry.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I wouldn't believe it today because we have so much information about like I said, Sasquatch behavior. And even John Green said if it were told today, he wouldn't believe it.
Mm-hmm. But I guess, and I'm not going to argue on the Osmonds' behalf, but at the date in which this happened, to use an entity like that when it really wasn't even in popular culture at that point, is that a coincidence? Because if you were to say, hey, there's some creepy dinosaur out in this area that, wanted to tear me apart to keep people out of your prospecting area, instead of coming up with this humanoid figure that stands 8 feet tall and walks off with you, I'm just trying to come up with the balance of, it's very similar as to what we hear today.
But we could make the same argument for Ape Canyon. But I don't believe those guys ever went back when they left. I don't think they ever went back to that spot.
Yeah.
Nope.
I know I wouldn't.
So
yeah.
So I didn't read this one, but the basis of the story, if the guy waited 30 years to tell the story, then really, honestly, it doesn't seem like somebody would make something up to protect something. Because if he was making it up to protect somebody, it'd been like the first time he hit town with his beaver pelts. He'd have been like, don't go up there, man. Something tried to kill me. It wouldn't have been like 30 years later when he's living in some cottage with like 4 kids and a dog.
That's a good point.
Do you know what I mean? Why would you make up the lie when it was the most useless?
All right.
Well, the fact of the matter is we really don't know if that's the first time he told the story. It's the first time he went public with the story.
Public with it.
Those are two very different things.
Mm-hmm. No.
And if you have a financial investment in something, come on, whether it's 1923 or 2023, like you're a son of a bitch, you're going to lie about whatever you can to keep people away from it. That's just human greed and human nature. And in 1923, when it's a lot harder to get to those spots and you don't have the technology to protect it, You do what you got to do to get the job done, right?
Makes sense. Hey, Kevin wants one of the three of us to ask Henry about the Gray Harbor incident.
Well, I'm happy to answer that. I happen to have a copy of one of those casts. It's a very interesting looking cast. These were found and they were casted by a sheriff's deputy, Dennis Harryford, in 1982, in an area called Abbott Hill. And I think the cast is pretty fascinating. I think it's possibly, yes, a real Sasquatch footprint cast. It was in mud. These were in mud.
And what was the conditions upon which the casts were taken? What perpetuated them to go out and cast them? Was there a sighting report? Was there somebody just stumbled upon them? Like, holy shit, there's these big feet.
I think somebody just found them. Somebody just found the footprints.
Well, it's kind of like what happened with the London Trackway, right, Henry? Somebody stumbled upon those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally.
So I mean, it wouldn't be the first time somebody just stumbled upon big feet, big footprints.
No, I stumble all the time, but who's counting? Hey, Jamie, to answer your question, stick around next week because that's when we start the season of the missing. So we won't answer that tonight, but next week we will be certainly covering probably 411 type of stories, but at least we'll branch off on our own and talk about that kind of thing too.
Yeah, next week is the intro to our season 4, The Missing, as we're going to talk about the missing people clusters, the strange scenario of national park disappearances. Is Sasquatch involved? Who the hell knows? But we're going to talk about it, and it's going to be an interesting 10-episode run before we break for the holidays. Be a nice little yeah, we're going to break for the holiday. We all need some time off. Henry's got to hang that mistletoe and get things going on. He's a jolly man.
Yeah, astronauts have mistletoe. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't.
No, well, they do. Athletes have athlete's foot. Astronauts have mistletoe.
Bake, what else you got for Henny?
Not much. I mean, I thank you for letting us ask you questions. Is there anything you want to tell us before? I mean, anything really interesting, or something that you want to keep for a book?
Well, I find this subject fascinating, and I hope to be around for many more years to be able to look into it and read about it. I just got Stan Gordon's Silent Invasion book. I just started on it. It's pretty good so far.
It gets weird.
Yeah,
I'm sure it does.
Fake, didn't you have a... I'll go ahead, Sean, because I'm almost done. Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to get... Henry, you have had a couple sightings.
I've had at least one that I can talk about briefly. It was a white creature. It was about 7.5 to 8 foot tall, and it walked across the highway in front of me at about 150 yards. And this thing stood in the ditch, never looked at me. And I stood with a side profile. I could see the right arm, the right bicep. It was just massive. As I passed it, I could see muscles in its back.
Pretty detailed sighting from what year was that again?
1998.
1998. So a year before I really got into this, into the field work myself. Before we get into the final humorous part, and those are a great question that Bacon wants to ask. Henry, I want to thank you personally as a good friend of mine, as a research partner, as a broadcast partner. You've been one of my favorite people to work with over 2 decades. You're a part of my family, and I love you. and I couldn't do any of this without you. So thank you, my friend. Without you, there wouldn't be a Sasquatch experience, buddy.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate it.
We appreciate you. Now go ahead, Baker, ask the question because you're busting at the seams.
So Henry, gotta know what's your favorite story on the largest hairy thing you've seen?
Oh, good night, everybody.
Yeah, no comment.
There we go. Folks, you've been watching and listening to the Sasquatch Experience. I'm Sean the Fork Chop Forker. To find out more about the show, go to SasquatchExperience.com, Facebook.com/Sasquatch Experience. We're also on Instagram if you want to take a look at our beautiful photos, our beautiful faces, whatever we're up to. Got some great things in the work. We got our special John Green episode that's going to be dropping if I can ever get that thing edited. It's quite the chore. Just a lot of things coming up the road. And we just, again, thank you for tuning in each and every week. Rate us and review fairly on your favorite podcatcher, on YouTube, wherever you care to post a review. The podcast will drop, soon. We'll edit it out, some of the slow spots, and tidy it up for rebroadcast. Had a little bit of a light flicker there, but we thank you all for tuning in. Henry, where can folks find out more about you?
You just go to my Facebook, Henry B. May the 4th, or my Twitter, Mr. May09.
He tweets. Baker, where can folks find you? He froze. Okay, that's a quick one. A face only. All right, Vance, where can we lost him? You can't find Baker anywhere, apparently.
No, that's fine. I'll probably end up. You can find me wherever Baker's at. Maybe I don't know. Facebook, Vance A Nesbitt. We all know what the A stands for. Instagram, acrobatic. Yes, very good. Acrobatic. Vance _ Nesbitt _ STF News.
News, not nudes.
Well, no, you can send nudes. That's fine.
No, you can't. I'm Sean, the Fork Chop Forker. Find me everywhere at Sean Forker. I'm my name. I don't hide behind a pseudonym. Next week, we start season 4, The Missing, 10 episodes dedicated to strange creature sightings. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Henry, give them those takeout words.
Y'all be good or be good at it.
See you next week, folks.
Thanks Henry.